get my way.
So let's talk about our really bad day. So when we did our earthquake debate, a few things we had to think about, right? So this was our points to ponder. And we talked about first, how do earthquakes work? So we learned in our volcanic unit again, right, that most of the earth is this ooey gooey center, okay, the molten rock, which is the core of the mantle, and then the crust is this really thin outer plate. Okay, so they're sitting on top of that and they're moving around. And then we know also that as you go deeper in the Earth's core, the temperature increases. Therefore, that liquid matter at the bottom of the mantle is hotter and is less dense. And what happens is that, I mean, just like we talked about in class, like when it's really hot outside, you don't go upstairs. Why? Because hot is and heat and temperature, anything that's hotter is less dense and it rises. So here we have what's called convection currents. And you can kind of see that happening down here. And what's happening is that hotter magma starts rising up towards the top of those crust. And then it's still moving, right? And then it starts cooling, and then it's going to sink, because as it gets cooler, it sinks because it's more dense and it gets heavier. And then now it's down here, right, where that heat source is, which heats it up, which then my arm doesn't bend that way, and it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. So these currents of just hot rising, cool sinking, hot rising, cool sinking happens. And that's basically what's happening beneath the crust in our mantle. And we call those convection currents. The convection currents are not specific just to the earth. They happen all over, like even when you're boiling water and stuff. So, but in this case, we're using the convection currents underneath in the mantle. Okay. Force. Okay, so we can't really talk about faults and earthquakes without talking about force. So those convection currents on that solid crust is enormous. So the plates undergo constant stress and strain, and moving, they kind of rub against each other. One can go under the other. We've kind of talked about that. But there are three. Oh, hold on one second. Let me pause my recording. Okay, so we look at what are the different types of geologic forces, and we have the tension force, which is pulling anything apart. Okay, there's tension and pulling it apart. Compression, which is going to push them together. And then shearing, where they're just sliding past each other in opposite directions. Okay, earthquakes largely occur in the weakest point of the crust, which is nothing but a line in the crust where two of those tectonic plates join, called faults. Okay, so faults is literally just kind of a break in the crust. When the plates collide into each other, their movement's obstructed, right? So it kind of sticks, and then it starts causing strain. So there's different kinds of strain we looked at: brittle, which is going to break; ductile, which bends; and then elastic, which I thought I had one. Hold on. I know I have. Yeah, here we go. Elastic strain, which is exactly what you think it is. It's a rubber band, right? So I can stretch it and then it goes back to the way it was. So as days pass by, the strain then it gets exceeded the threshold, or that amount before it breaks. And then all of that energy that it's been holding back gets let loose, right? Basically, right? So the friction then is that force that's resisting that relative motion. So it keeps the plates from moving continuously, right? So it's going to stop it. That friction stops it from moving. And then it builds up a lot of stress. Billions of tons of rocks smash into each other. Sooner or later, that stress has got to be too much. The fault ruptures, and then we get an earthquake. Okay, one of the things that we talked about then were other natural disasters. So what can earthquakes trigger? Well, they could trigger volcanic eruptions, landslides. We know it's going to trigger tsunamis. And then one of the things that we were concerned about here locally was tilt down, right? So there are the different types of margins, which we did talk about a little bit in the earthquake unit. So that's this divergent or the spreading apart, like in our Icelandic volcanoes. You get the ridge or the rift because the volcanoes come up and they start building those ridges, just again, like Iceland. Our convergent, which is subduction, that's our ring of fire. So, yep, we get earthquakes there as well. And then transform, which are kind of the earthquakes. And that's just when those boundaries are sliding past each other. Okay, so we had talked about the Cascadia Quake, right? So whether or not we should trigger the Cascadia Quake. Overall, I believe we said that we would actually trigger it with all the classes and all the different votes. So this quake is estimated, we said, to be 4 minutes long on a 9.2 on the Richter scale, which is really huge. And then we started saying, like, think about the time on this. Okay, so 4 minutes after we've had, or 4 minutes of 9.2 shaking, right? The shaking stops. Okay, the first thing we started doing is just checking. Okay, like, how is everybody in class? So we said this hypothetical situation, let's take place in Seattle. We are a classroom in Seattle. And so we just had all that. I'm checking you guys to make sure that we're all okay, checking myself. We're looking for damage. That clock is ticking. Remember when we said that? The clock is ticking. Now you got phone calls, like your parents are calling in to check on you, maybe your older siblings, your grandparents, your aunts or uncles, maybe. They're also calling everybody else and you're trying to call them. Pretty good chance power's out, pretty good chance that we don't have cell coverage. All of this is happening. We got 15 minutes now to figure out if we can get out of the way of this, 100 feet high tsunami that's barreling down on us. Okay. Roads are not passable. There's cracks in the roads. Buildings could be on fire, all kinds of stuff. Okay. So there could have been a warning, a compression wave that the animals detected, but because we were in class, we didn't get a chance to see it. We know that this quake is 30 times greater than anything that could possibly come out of San Andreas. Okay, this quake is on that 240-year cycle, and it's been 315 since we had the last one. We know that we go outside, that liquefation's occurred in the ground. So basically, our solid soils turned into a liquid for a little while. Our Seattle area and Portland areas are probably pretty good destroyed. We looked here and out in Duval, we're in this dark orange. Well, I guess medium orange, right? We're not in the red. We're not in that first dark orange. So we're in the second one. Maybe even a little bit in that dark, maybe around the L and the E. It's kind of hard to tell, but we're definitely going to be feeling the effects here in Duval and Carnation. Okay, we wanted to know how big is this fault line, and you can kind of see way down here in Eureka, and it goes past Vancouver. And we talked about too, like, it's not just that it's going to impact our Washington area, right? So we know about this quake and we know about it's happening before because there were tsunami deposits in Japan. So if we were to set this and trigger this earthquake, sorry, I have hiccups. You're impacting California, Oregon, Washington, Vancouver, as well as, Japan and some of those areas on the other side of the water. How would we do it? Well, we found out that, again, in Oklahoma and in Colorado, that wastewater from fracking or just any kind of water that was highly toxic, well, we're just shoving that right back down into the earth. Okay, well, remember, those faults are stuck with friction. Okay, so they might be locked in now, but if I put a whole bunch of water in my hands, I'm loosening up those fault lines. And so now there's less friction, okay, because that water acts as a lubricant. So where some of these wells have been active for 17 years before any quaking started, they've got 17 years of water here in Oklahoma before they've got to get rid of before the shaking stops. So they're saying it could be years or decades. So now we start thinking about our situation. We don't know how much water it would take for this to happen, right? But we know that we had this horrible event. We had 4 minutes of shaking. Then we had, checking each other, make sure everybody's okay. We can't get in. Now we're trying to figure out how to get out of the way of the tsunami. We don't have any roads that are possible. We don't have anything. And then we start looking up, because what else did we say was possible, right? So if we're going to continue with our bad day, we look up and we know that Mount Rainier is eroding from the inside out. So we have a tsunami coming. We have 15 minutes to get out of the way. There's a possible chance that a landslide, okay, from Mount Rainier's insides being eroded out, triggered the volcanic eruption. Now we've had 4 minutes of 9.2 on the Richter scale, massive shaking, buildings down, debris all over, roads are impassable. We've got a tsunami coming down at us. We possibly just triggered Mount Rainier. Now you've got the Lahars. Because remember, what made Mount Rainier so scary was the fact that it's covered in glaciers. Now you have boiling hot mud flows coming down the mountain. We could possibly have ash clouds. That's going to impact Tacoma. That's going to impact Orting, those kind of areas. Here in our neck of the woods, well, there's a possible chance that, let's just say we're going for, making this the worst bad day ever. Tilt Dam now just burst. Okay, so here in Duval Carnation, we may not have to worry about the tsunami, but we do have to worry about Tilt Dam. Okay, so these are some of the things that could happen if this huge earthquake were to occur, which is why we kind of started talking about what would be the advantages. Okay, so when we looked at the advantages, a lot of you guys kept saying, well, it's going to happen, right? We're well overdue. And if we were to trigger it, then we could prepare, we could evacuate, we could get people safe, we could turn off gas and power lines and stuff like that, save some infrastructure. Safety would be the huge thing. We could warn people, educate them, get them out of here, start fundraising now for the cleanup and rebuild. Basically, we wouldn't get caught off guard. Get it over with. We wouldn't be living under this cloud of when will it happen. Have some kind of control of their situation. People could say like, hey, you had, the opportunity to save us. Why didn't you? Why didn't, there'd be public outcry if we didn't. Do it now before our population gets any bigger was another thing you guys came up with. We could also study them more, because now we'd have an idea of like how they work. We'd be there to witness it. Mandated survival materials could be sent to everybody. Maybe you have to evacuate, mandatory evacuations, but we'd basically try to minimize the devastation by knowing and not getting caught off guard. But then we took a look at some of the disadvantages, like it may not happen while we're here, and messing with Mother Nature sometimes has unintended consequences. Even if we set out to do the right thing, it could make things worse. The natural earthquake, some of you said, what if it's actually smaller than what's been predicted? But we just set one off, and maybe now it's bigger than predicted because we are the ones that created it. Delaying it for the future. Public outcry. Why didn't you do more to protect us? Is what you'd hear if we let it happen. But it wouldn't be on our hands. We wouldn't be responsible for it, right? We'd let nature take its course and let the natural order have its way. If we wait, we might have more technology, more ways to be able to predict and to know anyway. We can be warned if we pay attention to animals. We can learn more by letting it happen naturally. Population control did get brought up. Yep, it is true. And then possibly we could save money because we wouldn't be dumping all of this and to try to figure out how to make this work and set it off. Okay, so that was our bad day lecture. And I'm going to go ahead and get ready for the next one. See you soon, guys.